Hello, everyone. My name is Erica Strauss. I am a occupational therapy student from Rockhurst University, and today I will be presenting on adult/elder abuse. So first, I wanted to start us off with the trigger warning. So just know that this presentation will include some serious topics such as different forms of abuse. Specifically, it will also include sexual abuse. And throughout this presentation, it might spark some insight into your own situation or possibly a situation of a family member or a friend that you have. And having those realizations can be really hard to deal with. So please, throughout this presentation, make sure to take care of yourself, pause when needed, excuse yourself, and come back to this presentation when you feel ready. Okay, so first we're going to talk about what is elder abuse in general. So traditionally, it is known as the phrase elder abuse. And this is when an individual mistreats an adult who depends on them for help with activities of everyday life, such as bathing, dressing, taking their medication, transportation, getting them to their doctor's appointments, um, making sure they have food available to them, making sure that they are able to cook that food or if that food needs to be cooked for them. So it's anyone that they are relying on, that person that they're relying on is mistreating them. And the reason I say adult/elder abuse is because, again, traditionally, if you research this, Google it, the phrase is elder abuse. But I feel like there's kind of a stigma behind the word elder. And not everyone who this presentation can relate to considers themselves an elder or is of elder age. So this can really happen to any adult of any age who has a caregiver of any kind on any level. So you could be completely dependent on that caregiver, or that caregiver could just be providing you moderate assistance with certain things. So it's anywhere on that scale. So who could these abusers possibly be? Pretty much, again, anyone who is a caregiver of any form. So if you have a family member that's taking care of you, whether that's full-time or part-time, niece, nephew, your child, uh, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, any family member. It could also be your spouse or partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, anyone you're in a romantic relationship with could be a possible abuser. A hired caretaker, so someone who's an outside party that you've hired and is coming into your home or helping you get to different places. And lastly, possible abusers could be at outside living facilities, so elder care facilities, assisted living, nursing home, any workers at any of those sites, whether it's um, a rehab therapist, a nurse, a tech, someone who cooks food, cleans your room, any of those people in those facilities could be a possible abuser. So again, it doesn't have to be someone that's with you 24/7. So real quick, I want to pause before I continue and I want to explain why this is a topic everyone needs to hear about. So right now you might be thinking, well, this presentation doesn't really apply to me because I know my relationship with my caretaker is healthy. They're not abusing me. I'm in a very good situation. But there are some reasons as to why this presentation still applies to you. One, even if your caretaker situation is good, someone close to you could not be in that same situation. So this presentation will provide you with information that will allow you to identify and then help that family member or friend who is in an abusive caretaking relationship. You also have to be realistic about your own situation. And the sad reality is that someday your caretaker situation could change. So, for example, if your spouse is taking care of you, one day they could get into an accident or come down with a severe illness or condition to where they can no longer take care of you. Or you might have a family member taking care of you that then runs into their own family crisis and they are no longer able to take care of you. or say the person who is currently caretaking for you passes away and then you have to go live in assisted living facility. You just never know where you're going to be down the road, and the new person or persons that become your caretaker could possibly be abusive. You also want to note that people do change. So there is the possibility that your current caretaker could become abusive down the road. Of course, we don't ever want to, you know, no one wants that. No one expects that to happen, but sometimes you just never know. And sometimes over time, stress and the responsibilities of caretaking can change a person. And years from now, they could, become abusive because of all those responsibilities and stress that they've taken on with caretaking, which is not a valid reason for abusing you, but we will get it more into that later. So now we're going to break down the specific types of abuse. The first and most well-known form of abuse is physical. So that's any form of bodily harm being done. So hitting, pushing, slapping are all types of physical abuse. The ones that you want to pay attention to a little bit more that are a little less obvious, because we all know that, like, oh, if someone closes their fist and, slams it into my face and punches me, that's abuse. But there's some other, a little bit more well hidden forms of physical abuse that might be taking place. So, pinching you or grabbing you really hard and aggressively, burning you, restraining you against your will. So, like tying your arms up to your bed, tying you down in any form, transferring you really hard and aggressively. So, taking you from your bed to your wheelchair and just throwing you down instead of taking the proper precautions and being gentle with you. Those are also forms of physical abuse that you want to watch out for because they're a little less obvious than someone just shoving you. Another form of abuse that is pretty well known is emotional abuse. This is also known as psychological abuse. And this is an important one to note that if any of these other forms of abuse is happening, emotional abuse is also likely occurring alongside with it as well. So this can be someone saying hurtful words, yelling, threatening, ignoring you. Those are all forms of emotional abuse, keeping you away from your loved ones or close friends or like someone, keeping you from coming to the American Stroke Foundation meetings as a way to punish you. That's a form of abuse, emotional abuse. And a big one that I really want to hit on with the stroke survivors and people who are of an older age is gaslighting. This is a form of manipulation that I really want to hit on with you all. And I'll get into why. So, gaslighting is making someone believe that they are crazy and that whatever just happened didn't happen. So, for example, if I hit pretend fake person here, Stacy, say I hit Stacy, and then later in the day, Stacy's like, "Why did you do that? Why did you hit me?" I would then turn and be like, "That never happened. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that didn't happen," or making it believe that it was Stacy's fault that I hit her. That is what gaslighting is. So the reason this is really big for this population is that a lot of stroke survivors or people who are becoming an older age are starting to have issues with memory, and their memory might not be as strong, or you might have some memory loss occurring. And so it can be very easy for an abuser to manipulate you and gaslight you and say things like, well, your memory is not good. Your memory is not good anyway. So why, like, you're sitting here saying that I did this to you, but I didn't. And you shouldn't trust yourself because your memory is not good. And they're gaslighting you and using your memory and your issues with your memory as a way to manipulate you. And so, a way to kind of protect yourself from this is anytime any form of abuse happens, document it. Write down the date, the time, and what happened, either in your own journal or if writing is difficult for you or painful, or you don't feel like your handwriting is legible enough, then on your phone or iPad, open up your notes app and do a voice memo or like a talk to text of what happened. So that way you have it for one yourself as like a way of like, no, this did happen. Like I wouldn't have just wrote this down because like I wrote this down because it happened and therefore you're more sure of yourself. And also in case authorities need to be contacted in the future because of the abuse that's occurring, you have that as evidence, that documentation as evidence. So it's a good way to protect yourself from being gaslit and being under that form of emotional abuse. Another type of abuse is sexual. So this is forcing the adult to watch or be a part of any sexual acts. And that any is a really important key word there. So sexual abuse is not just forcing um, intercourse upon you. Sexual abuse can be forcing you to watch pornography or forcing you to watch other people have sex. It can be touching you in your private areas. For example, while someone's helping you dress and undress, they start touching you inappropriately, groping you. Those are all forms of sexual abuse, other than forced penetration, which of course is also sexual abuse. Abandonment is the fourth form of abuse that I want to talk about. So, this is leaving an adult who needs help alone without planning for their care. So, say your spouse is the caretaker for you and you rely on them 24/7 to take care of you. Like you are that dependent on that person. And one day your spouse just up and leaves for a week to go on vacation with their friends, but they didn't plan for any sort of other care for you. No one to come take care of you, nothing like that. That is abandonment, which is a form of abuse because you're not receiving the care that you need to access your daily things, such as food, being able to go to the restroom, clean yourself. They left you and didn't plan for any other care. The next form of abuse I want to talk about is financial. So, this is any form of your money being stolen, and this can happen in a few different ways. So, one way is being lied to or guilted into giving money to someone. So, for example, say you have a grandchild who's going off to college and they hit you up saying, Grandma, Grandpa, I need money for groceries. Could you help me out? Like, could you send me some money each week for groceries? But in turn, that child is using the money for drinking, drugs, partying, things like that. That's a form of financial abuse because they're manipulating you. That's bringing in that emotional component. They're manipulating you for your money, which is the financial component of the abuse, um, and telling you it's for one thing, which is what you think the money is being used for, but it's actually being used for something else. So that's being lied to receive money from you. Forging checks, taking your retirement or social security benefits, those are also forms of financial abuse. I know for some people, they rely on their caretaker to pay their bills and things like that. So they might have access to your credit card or bank account information. And a form of abuse is using those things, those numbers, account numbers, to then in turn steal money from you. Another form of financial abuse is changing the names on your will, bank account, life insurance policy, title to your house, doing all of those things without your knowledge and getting your permission to do so. The last form of adult and elder abuse I want to talk about is neglect. And this is different than abandonment because abandonment is completely just up and leaving you and not planning for anyone else to take care of you. And neglect is just not attending to your needs. And it could be some of your needs or all of your needs. So withholding food from you, withholding meds from you, withholding your access to healthcare. So say you fell and you've got a bruise and a bump on the side of your head and you need to go to the hospital and the person who takes you is refusing to take you. that is a form of neglect. So again, that was a lot. Please pause this video if you need to and take care of yourself before continuing, because that's a lot of information. So next we're going to talk about the signs of abuse. So this is how you can spot it in yourself or someone else. So one thing to note about the signs of abuse is that some of these signs can also just be normal things occurring. Just because you see some of these signs doesn't mean abuse is happening. So it's important to kind of note how often it's occurring, if you know the reason behind, some of these things occurring, or just kind of documenting in your head. Those are good ways to sort through these signs of abuse and recognize whether or not it's something else going on or if it's abuse. So the first one that kind of goes right with what we're talking about is change in mood or personality. So seeming depressed, confused, or withdrawn. And again, this can happen to anyone on any day. This could happen to someone because they just lost a family member, or maybe they're battling depression in general. So that's where communication can come in, and talking to someone, asking them what's going on, or noting how long have they seemed depressed or withdrawn. That could kind of help you figure out what else is going on. And with that, noting how many of these signs of abuse are occurring. Because usually, not always, but usually more than one of these is occurring, which again can help you put it in the category of abuse rather than something else. So with that, also isolating themselves. So if someone comes into ASF and you notice that they're usually a very talkative social person, and during lunch they start sitting at a table by themselves, they're not talking to their friends, and that is happening repeatedly when they come in, that could be a possible sign of abuse. Um, Recent changes in banking or spending patterns. So if you hear a friend talking and you know that they're a little bit more frugal with their money, but you hear them talking about, oh, I'm buying this for this family member and this for this family member, and I've had this family member ask for money and I'm giving them some too, and that could be some abuse going on, some of that manipulation that we talked about, or them being lied to about what that money is used for. They're being guilted into giving their family members money, which again is a form of abuse. Bed sores or other preventable conditions, those would be signs of neglect or abandonment happening. So we all know that getting up and moving, even if you are a wheelchair user, is very important. So if those bed sores or other preventable conditions are occurring, and again, on a repeated basis, that means that that person is not getting up like they're supposed to. Their caregiver is not helping make sure they're getting up out of that wheelchair or bed. Now, there's also physical signs on the body that are a little bit easier, if you will, to spot rather than kind of having to detect and sort through things with someone's mood. These are like physical on the body, you can see them. So, someone being dirty or unkept, that's that neglect or abandonment, or someone is not taking care of that person and making sure they're clean, their hair's getting washed, they're taking showers, bathing, things like that. If a person is underfed or dehydrated, so if they start to look malnourished, they're not receiving the proper nutritional intake. Over or under medicated. So this especially is one that's easier, if you will, to detect with someone that you know well, because we know how our friends are and we know how they usually present. And so if they're over medicated, they might seem a little bit more drowsy or not able to get their words out right or just not seem coherent. And a caregiver could be doing that because they might, it's a form of abuse. This is going to sound a little bit odd, but the caregiver might, not want that person to talk as much, where they just think it's easier to move them around when they're all drugged up on their medication. But that is a form of abuse. Unexplained bruises or scars. So again, this is one you have to be careful with, but is a really good, a little bit more obvious indicator of abuse. So I know that as you get older, it is much easier to bruise. And, it's not uncommon to like have a little bruise here or there on your arm, and you're like, oh, I probably bumped into something. But again, it's those repeated bruises that are occurring and happening in kind of unexplained ways. So, like a bruise under the eye, or bruises in the pattern of kind of like fingers, or like nail marks or scars that are kind of like that forefinger scratch down. That's kind of a pattern of like, oh, a hand did that. That wasn't just, oh, a bump scratch on the table. So that's kind of what to look for there. You got to kind of put your detective skills in use and look for more details than just the bruise. So another one is if there's bruising all the way around the wrist, that could mean that that person's being restrained against their will, which is a form of abuse. And the last one is burns. So a common one is those small circles, which means that someone's putting their cigarette out on the skin as a form of abuse, most likely a punishment. So before I get to solutions and resources, I really want to validate that this is hard. Identifying the abuse and then taking action after that, especially if the abuse is coming from someone that you love or trust. Because you might be feeling guilty because they're helping you, they're taking care of you, they're doing all these things for you, they're helping you survive, and they do so much for you that, you know what, you might be thinking, it's okay if if they're pinching me or digging their nails into me, like, it's okay if they get frustrated and say really hurtful things to me, like, they do so much for me, like, it's okay. But the reality is, no one deserves abuse. And none of you deserve abuse, no matter who's taking care of you, how much care you need. And if someone is going to abuse you and treat you in the ways that we talked about, that is their problem, and they should not be a caregiver. It is not a reflection of you at all, because you needing some form of caretaking, you shouldn't be punished for that. That is out of your control. So if someone is getting too overwhelmed by the process and it is too much for them, then they need to step away if they cannot handle it in an appropriate and healthy manner, because you do not in turn deserve to be abused and punished for that, because then that decreases your quality of life, and you don't deserve that, because all of you deserve to be treated with love and care. So what I'm going to leave you all with today is what to do if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse. So first, if you or someone you know is in urgent danger, life or death, then you call 911. I wouldn't even look at, contacting resources and if it's life or death, big urgent situation, you just call 911. Another thing you can do is talk to an American Stroke Foundation site manager for assistance. So if you go to the location in Kansas for American Stroke Foundation, then the person you would talk to is MUSNA. Now, do note that MUSNA can only do so much to assist, because and this is going to sound harsh, but I'll kind of explain why. It is not her job to solve the problem. It is her job to help you get to resources so you're able to solve the problem. Because MUSNA is an occupational therapist running American Stroke Foundation. So she doesn't have the resources to solve whatever situation is going on. But if you need help calling authorities, or if you need help, getting online to the website, so that way you can access all that. If you need help finding someone to talk to, a therapist, whatnot, MUSNA can help you with those things. So please reach out. Like, you are not alone. And with that, talking to individuals who you're close to, friends, family, an outside trusted party for help, that's good, because you are not alone and you shouldn't have to go through that process alone. So this first resource is a really big, good one. I would screenshot it if you're watching this online. This is the Elder Care Locator. And again, please don't let that word elder deter you from using it. This is their phone number, email, and website. And what this does is it's a nationwide service, and they connect older American adults um, to a local trustworthy support to help you take the next steps. So this is kind of the big umbrella that helps find resources near you that then help infiltrate the problem. So when I used the elder care locator, this is what popped up for me when I put in my zip code, the elder abuse prevention, adult abuse, and neglect hotline. And I really like there that they use the word adult and not just elder. And it gave me everything as you can see here. So the address of the facility, website, office phone, um, all of that is there for me to use. So that way I can contact them in whatever way is best for me. The Missouri Adult Abuse and Neglect Hotline responds to reports of abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. So again, these resources are for more than just physical abuse, right? And they even have an option for those who are hearing impaired to be able to contact them. These are some other resources I found. So the National Adult Protective Services Association and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Office for Older Americans. So again, these are larger resources that can help point you in the right direction for resources that are closer to you. The National Center for Elder Abuse, the National Elder Fraud Hotline, and National Domestic Violence Hotline. Excuse me. And I want to show you here that I have a really big list. Let me make sure I put that up here. That you can access if you contact MUSNA or anyone else at American Stroke Foundation. These are just all the resources that I was talking about in a concise, nice, and neat list. So again, that elder care locator at the top there, and then everything else underneath it. And there is this nice infographic as well that you can feel free to reach out to MUSNA or anyone else at American Stroke Foundation that just gives a nice, neat list, organized list of everything we talked about today. So those types of abuse up here, and then those signs to look for as well. So if this is something you'd like to keep for yourself for the future, or if you'd like to give to a family member or friend, reach out and they can print that out for you and get that to you. But yeah, so that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for listening.